The day I turned the wheel. Dawn sat low over Alder Fen, Colorado, quiet as a held breath. I stood beside my dam, hand on rust. I pulled, and the lake began falling. Water roared like a freight train. The spillway spat white foam, then brown. Across at Lake Shade Reserve, the fancy resort glittered with 1,000 windows. Joggers stopped mid-step. Birds wheeled high, confused. I felt old bones wake. The dam I built 20 years earlier finally answered my hand. I watched the hotel dock tilt. I heard metal ping as bolts tightened and then failed. Golf carts buzzed, people shouting. I tasted copper in my mouth, fear mixed with joy. It felt wrong and right together, like ripping a bandage that had become part of your skin. Before we continue, please drop a like and comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Australia, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to know. Don't just sit back, tell me where in the world you are. Now, let's dive into the story. My phone rattled in my pocket. Tamsin, my sister, called from 122 Juniper Wash Lane. "Harlan, don't you dare," she cried, voice thin as glass. "Think of the lawsuits." I stared across the shrinking water. "They destroyed my bridge, Taz. They took our name off the map." I didn't hang up. She did. Sirens wailed from Alderfen Ridge Highway. The sheriff's Tahoe hit gravel, lights strobing like underwater lightning. My hand trembled, but I held the wheel steady. The lake fell another foot, revealing a muddy ribcage of old stumps. Guests panicked on balconies. Karen Volta's empire began to tilt. I remembered when she laughed at me at the town hall, calling me Grandpa Quaid. She wore a pearl jacket, teeth bright as coins. "Progress is happening with or without you," she said. I kept my temper then. Today, the water kept it for me. The shore cracked like dry pottery. A young deputy jogged up, hat in hand. "Mr. Quaid, you need to stop." I pointed at the rusted sign welded to concrete. "Quaid's Private Dam, easement recorded 1998. He read, lips moving. Behind him, the sheriff studied the waterline and swore under his breath. They both suddenly looked smaller. Karen appeared on the far boardwalk, heels digging into planks, phone at her ear. Even at that distance, I saw fury. She pointed at me like I was a nail that needed hammering. My cane shook. My heart did too. But I had come too far to turn the wheel back. I thought of the bridge they took, cedar boards my wife varnished each spring. I thought of my grandchildren, Asa and Lark, counting turtle heads at dusk. I saw sawdust moving like funerals on water. The ache of that morning had never left. Today, I gave it somewhere to go. The sheriff shaded his face. "Mr. Quaid, last chance." The wheel groaned but held. The lake exhaled again. Somewhere, glass shattered. I closed my eyes and spoke to the dam like a prayer. "Hold for me, old friend." Then I heard tires on gravel behind me, and Tamsin's door slam. Tamsin and I grew up lean as fence posts on this basin. Our mother taught numbers, our father welded. He said steel is just stubborn water. When I was 30, I sketched a wall in a spiral notebook. By 40, I poured it. The Quaid Dam, simple, tough hours. Back then, Alderfen wasn't brochures and brunch. It was dust, cattle, and hands that cracked each winter. Lake Shade was just a dry bowl where tumbleweeds made plans. I married Mira at the courthouse on Resin Street. We ate peaches on a tailgate and called it a honeymoon. I built anyway. The dam rose on weekends. Neighbors came with thermoses and gossip. I paid them in chili and respect. Tamsin measured rebar lengths with a tape that had her finger grease on it forever. When we sealed the sluice, a thin vein of water began to collect like a saved secret. We called it Ember Lake after Myra's hair. The first spring, carp flashed like coins. The second, reeds sang. I built a cedar bridge across the narrow western throat, the spot where Asa learned to cast. People picnicked. We shared the shore with anyone who asked. Courtesy was our fence. Then investors arrived with polished boots and drone photos. They liked the lake. They liked my view more. "Imagine boutiques," a man named Fleet said, his handshake slick. He handed me a brochure with stock children. "Sell development rights. Keep the house." I kept the brochure to start campfires. Karen Volta floated in next, all white blazer and mirrored sunglasses. She said she lived at 9 Aurelia Loop, but she really lived in meetings. We're forming an HOA, she said, like a threat wrapped in ribbon. We'll keep things beautiful. I looked at my mud boots and thought, beautiful already. She wanted dues from everyone with a mailbox within sight of water. She called it shoreline synergy. I called it theft by stationery. Tamsin said, let's just listen. Karen smiled. We can help you modernize. I said I didn't need help making coffee or decisions. That was our first fight. The condos rose like a rash around the cove. HOA gates clicked shut. Signs bloomed, quiet hours. Authorized launch only. No fishing. Residents waved at me like I was the groundskeeper. I stopped waving back. I added a little plaque to the bridge, Quade's Walk. It glowed like a stubborn candle. A year later, the hotel plan appeared, glossy and loud. $24 million of glass and waterfalls. Their mock-ups used my lake like a borrowed face. Karen called it Lake Shade Grand. I called it other people's money. She said, the bridge is an eyesore. I said, then don't look. We argued in front of strangers and a flag. She showed a safety report from an inspector I'd never met. Your bridge must go, she said. It's a liability to the community. I held up my deed. My bridge is not your anything. Her smile sharpened. We'll see, she said, walking away. The morning they took the bridge, Alder Fen smelled like rain that never came. I drove the old Studebaker to the West Throat with a thermos and a promise to fix a squeaky plank. The cove was quiet. Too quiet. Then I saw the water glitter with tiny floating splinters. My stomach dropped so fast I grabbed the tailgate. The cedar arch was gone. Ropes hung from rebar stubs like frayed teeth. I stepped to the edge and almost slipped on wet sawdust. A laminated notice fluttered on a stake. Unsafe structure removed, Lakeshade Estates HA, by order of safety. I bent and picked up a varnished board end, Myra's handwriting still faint underneath, Summer '07. I heard Tamsin's car crunch gravel. She ran down the slope, hair out of its clip. Harlan, I tried to stop them, she said, breathless. They came at dawn with a deputy and bolt cutters. I stared at her. You gave them the gate code. She looked at her shoes. Karen said they only wanted measurements. The wind took the smell of fresh-cut cedar and pushed it in my face. There are some mistakes you can fix, I said. This one will take water. Karen arrived an hour later with coffee and a camera crew. We're protecting families, she told the lens, voice sweet. Unsafe structures cannot remain. I said nothing. I took more photographs than her, though. Not of the gap, of tire tracks. Of footprints. Of the deputy's badge number. Evidence breathes to. That night, Karen emailed the town list. A safer shoreline benefits all. Replies clapped. The few who didn't clap wrote privately, sorry. Polite sorrow does nothing for ghosts. Mira set my coffee down and cupped my cheek. You built this place, she whispered. Don't let paper steal it. I hung the laminated notice in the kitchen like an especially ugly trophy. I called the county recorder. Who signed the order? I asked. Inspector H. Kiln, the clerk said. He doesn't usually work lakes. I wrote his name down, then wrote it again until the letters looked strange. At midnight, I drove to the dam. The stars were mean and bright. I ran my hand along the wheel, found the pits and scars I knew better than my knuckles. I whispered to the concrete. You remember me? The dam said nothing, but the cold gave me an answer anyway. By morning, the hotel cranes swung like praying mantises. The workers had a rhythm, and money gave them drums. I watched one drop an expensive panel. It shattered like a quiet warning. Karen waved her arms like a conductor, glossy hair catching sun. She looked across the water and smiled at me. I smiled back and felt a new tooth grow in, one with an edge. I called Tamsin. We need to talk, I said. Come to Obsidian Hollow tonight. She said she couldn't. Karen's invited me to dinner at Aurelia Loop, she said. We should keep the peace. Tell me how it tastes, I said. Dinner at my place felt like court. Tamsin arrived with a tin of pear tart and a folder. Karen says the hotel brings jobs, she began. She offered to buy the water rights for a number I can't stop seeing. She slid a page over. The number glowed like a trap. I read slowly. They wanted control of lake level, dock permits, shoreline use. They called it partnership. They wanted my dams handle more than my handshake. It's money, Taz, I said, not air. She rubbed her temples. Milo's college, she whispered. Mom's medical bills. Money is heavy when you carry names. Mira cleared plates softly, the way you do when the room is glass. We've carried bills before, she said. We didn't sell our name to do it. Tamsin's lip trembled. Sometimes you sound like a storybook, she snapped. I saw her flinch at her own tone. Grief makes sharp words easier. Karen invited me to the Lakeshade office next day. Reception smelled like citrus and victory. She gestured at a wall map with pins. The bridge was rotting, she said, eyes big. We saved you. I put photos on the table, tire tracks, deputy, chainsaw in HOA truck bed. She didn't blink. I'll rebuild it, I said. On my land. She clasped her hands. You won't, she said, soft as a pillow over a mouth. Our covenants prohibit unapproved structures. It's community water. I slid my deed across. Easement recorded, I said. Private dam. She smiled. Courts love communities, she whispered. Work crews hammered at the hotel shell. Investors in golf shirts walked the shore, pointing at my dock like it was an old tooth that needed extraction. I took notes. A crane swung too close to my fence, snapped a post. Karen said she'd look into it. I kept the broken post. That week, letters piled like snowdrifts, compliance notices, fines, neighborly reminders. They used words like delinquent and violation. One envelope had a photograph of me fixing a gate. Unauthorized maintenance, the caption read. I laughed so hard I choked. Then I stapled it to the barn wall, a calendar of nonsense. At the hardware store, people avoided my aisle. Progress made cowards fashionable. Mr. Gott, the clerk, slid me a receipt and a quiet apology with his eyes. Outside, Asa asked, Granddad, are we the bad guys? I crouched, knees cracking. Only in stories where money writes the ending, I said. That night, I turned off the porch light and sat with the dark. I pictured the lake dry, the hotel standing like a stranded ship, ridiculous and proud. I wondered how long hope can weigh before it starts to bend. Then my phone buzzed, an email from Inspector H. Kiln. Meeting request. I clicked it open. He wanted to walk the site, review legacy structures, and ensure compliance. The phrases smelled like old fish. I wrote back one word, tomorrow. I shut the laptop and touched the scar on my thumb from the cedar saw. The skin remembered the bridge. So did I. Inspector H. Kiln arrived with a clipboard and silence. He wore boots too clean for gravel. You built this, he said at the dam. I nodded. He eyed the wheel, the bolts, the spillway lip. Old but sound, he muttered. He did not look surprised. Surprise is for honest men. Why the bridge order? I asked. He didn't meet my eyes. Complaint, inspection, removal, he said, like reciting steps to a dance. From whom? He checked a box that had no words. Community action, he said. I took a picture of the unchecked box. He pretended not to notice my camera. He left with a promise to follow up. I stood alone, counting the rivets for the 100th time. I knew then that courts would be slow and letters would be snakes. Water is faster than paper. It knows only gravity and release. I sketched the wheel and wrote, turn here, hold there. For 3 weeks I repaired the sluice that nobody knew was cracked. I oiled the gate hinges. I measured the overflow channel and cleared a tangle of winter branches. I moved like a thief inside my own life. At dinner, I spoke of weather and soup. Tamsin did not call much. Karen held a groundbreaking party for the Lakeshade Grand. Banners shouted 24 million. The senators shook hands. A violinist played near the dock, and the lake made every note sound expensive. Cameras loved her. She said, this hotel will be the heart of Alderfen. I felt my own heart go flinty. A letter from their attorney arrived, thicker than a brick. "Cease and desist any manipulation of lake level," it said, accusing me of things I had not yet done. I smiled. "You can't cease what hasn't begun," I told the air. The air said nothing back, but the wheel glinted like a wink. Mira caught me building a toolbox that was not for tools. It held photos, copies of deeds, 3 affidavits from old-timers, and a flash drive with a video of chainsaws cutting cedar. "You're planning something," she said. I kissed her palm. "I'm planning to remember," I said. Loudly. At church, Pastor Illo hosted community healing. Karen took the microphone and practiced forgiveness in public. "We welcome everyone's stories," she said, smiling at me like a dentist. I stood and said, "I had a bridge." The room shifted. Someone coughed truth. Karen's smile thinned, but it stayed. That evening, Tamsin arrived with a banker named Ori Pike. He admired our living room and our view and our dog like he wanted to buy them, too. He offered a refinancing package that smelled like leash. I showed him the door kindly. Tamsin's eyes shone with tears I couldn't catch. When the first fireflies lit the reeds, I walked to the dam with my cane. The wheel felt patient in my hand, like an old friend waiting at a train station. I whispered, "Tomorrow?" The night answered with crickets and a distant laugh from the hotel decks. Even their laughter felt rented. I slept badly. I dreamed water ran uphill while men in suits applauded. When I woke, the room held the gray of hard choices. I put on my oldest boots, the ones with my name burned inside the heel. H. Quaid. I made coffee thick as winter and watched the east turn gold. I reached the dam before the sun found its voice. The metal was slick with dew. I wiped it with my sleeve and felt the grit bite my palm. For a second I waited for a sign, thunder, a hawk, some bright idea. Nothing came. Sometimes you start the story yourself. I pulled. The wheel refused like a mule. I leaned, hips and hope together. Something inside groaned awake. A sound rose that I had not heard in 20 years, the throat clearing of a giant. Water leapt forward, angry and free. The spillway took the first punch, then the second, then smiled. Across the lake, the hotel's pool lights looked confused in daylight. The shore dropped a foot, then 2. Mud showed itself, not ashamed. A man in a robe stared at his feet and shouted like the ground had betrayed him. It had not. It had only returned to being ground. My phone rang again. "Tamsin." "Harlan, stop. Please. Karen says they'll freeze our accounts." "They aren't our accounts," I said. "They're our chains." She started to argue, then cried instead. I closed my eyes and felt a 50-year-old boy inside me hold his older hand steady. "I'll be here," I said. Sirens dragged their noise up the southern road. Sheriff Tobin climbed out, mouth hard. "Harlan," he said, "I'm asking as a neighbor." I pointed at the sign again. He read it again, slower. "You're within rights," he said, "but you're going to pull every hornet from every tree." "I know," I said. Karen arrived in a boat, wake slapping the exposed mud. She wore a red blazer like a warning. "Close it," she yelled. "You're committing vandalism." "Against what?" I asked. "The sky." She lifted her phone like a badge. "Investors are watching." I shrugged. "Let them admire honest ground," I said and turned. By noon, the lake wore a necklace of stranded docks. Reeds lay like wet hair on the shore. Fish flashed and found the channel downhill. I carried a few to deeper pockets with a bucket. A child from the hotel cried. I handed him the bucket. "Help," I said. He did. Karen's board members formed a worried flock on the boardwalk. A man in a pale suit vomited into his hands. The head chef threw away a menu. A yoga instructor said, "Breathe," then forgot how. I stood on concrete older than their contracts and listened to a sound that sounded like truth. When the first balcony railing peeled away with a pop, a cheer rose from somewhere on the Alderfen side. It was small and guilty and honest. I didn't join it. Revenge tastes better without applause. I drank water and thought about cedar. I thought about what it means to be stubborn, right? Sheriff Tobin tapped my arm. You're going to court, he said. You know that. I nodded. I'll bring my pictures, I said. He squinted toward the hotel. You'll have more pictures by morning, he said. The wheel hummed under my hand, warm now. Then, as the sun slid, a storm gathered. The storm skipped us, but the hotel didn't. Wind pushed empty lake smells through alderfen, rich and sour. By morning, the waterline sat low like a belt tightened one notch too far. Lake Shade Grand had lost its mirror. Without it, the glass looked like a costume. Money looked strange without water. Emails crashed my inbox like angry surf. Karen's attorney demanded immediate closure and damages beyond valuation. Investors CC'd everyone they knew and a few they didn't. Someone threatened to salt the ground with lawsuits. I made oatmeal and fed the dog. Then I printed everything and put it in the ugly folder. Tamsin came by quietly. Her eyes were ringed like she'd lost a fight with sleep. Milo's school called, she said. Parents are asking questions. I poured coffee. We can answer them, I said. We can say we remembered who we are. She stirred cream into the black like she was erasing it. Karen held a press conference on the beach dock. Environmental vandalism, she declared. Terror against families. A reporter asked about the bridge. She blinked. Irrelevant, she said. Sheriff Tobin, off camera, folded his arms. I watched from the spillway, hat low. The camera loved her again. It always did until it didn't. By noon, booking cancellations scrolled like credits. Weddings moved to hotels with oceans they hadn't stolen. The spa offered land-based serenity. Guests took selfies with dried fish and complained about country smells. The town council scheduled an emergency session. Pastor O put out folding chairs and a prayer for soft tempers. A courier brought an injunction. Temporary restraining order, he announced, like he was naming a ship. It ordered me to close the gate until a hearing. I read it twice. Then I closed the gate, the wheel sighing into stillness. The lake did not rise. It only stopped falling. Silence felt heavier. Karen smiled into new cameras. Justice begins, she trilled. I walked the new shoreline with my cane and counted secrets revealed by mud. An old anchor, a wedding ring, one long bone that turned out to be driftwood. I felt tired in a way that felt clean instead of empty. That night, Tamsin brought a casserole and an apology wrapped in foil. I believed her, she said, because I wanted easier. I washed the dish and said, me too once. We sat with the television off. The house made old noises that sounded like people talking from another room. In bed, I dreamed of the bridge alive again, varnish shining like wet leaves. I could hear Mira laughing as if the boards themselves had learned the sound. When I woke, the injunction lay on the table, flat and official. The hearing was set for Tuesday. I ironed my shirt. Before sunrise, I checked the dam, running a hand along every bolt like counting heads. The wheel felt like a sleeping horse under my palm. Rest, I told it. We'll ride again if we must. Across the basin, the hotel lights flickered like a spaceship that had landed on the wrong planet. Tuesday smelled like coffee, paper, and nerves. The county courthouse on Beryl Street had floors that remembered spurs and protests. Karen strutted in with 3 attorneys and a scarf that looked expensive enough to tip a waitress twice. I walked in with Tamsin, a file box, and my best boots. Judge Mireille Saxon wore reading glasses like armor. We will hear facts, she said. We will respect time. Karen's lead lawyer, Mr. Thatch, talked like a waterfall of commas. He said reckless, and malice, and irreparable harm. He held up photos of stranded kayaks and one sad swan that was actually plastic. My lawyer, a young man named Calder Rhine, stood like a fence post. Property rights, he said. Recorded easement, 1998. Maintenance obligations met by Mr. Quaid for 20 years. No contract transferring control. HOA removal of private structure without due process. He handed in the cedar cutting video. The saw's whine filled the room. Inspector H. Kiln took the stand and avoided my eyes. He said he had been pressured to sign. By whom? Calder. Kiln glanced at Karen. Community representatives, he said. The judge's eyebrow rose like a crane. Calder produced the chain of custody email, where Karen's assistant wrote, "Please sign and return today." Karen testified last, voice steady, charm set to high. "We acted to protect families," she said. Calder asked, "Did your crew step onto Mr. Quaid's land?" She smiled. "There is debate." He showed a photo of her white heels on my fence rail. The courtroom made the sound of people not breathing. I spoke simply. "I built the dam. I hold the deed. I shared this lake for years. They destroyed my bridge without asking. I opened the gate to protect my rights and my memory." The judge asked, "Did you intend to harm the hotel?" I said, "I intended to reclaim truth." Thatch waved the injunction like a flag. "He is a danger." Calder showed maintenance logs, engineering notes, and fish relocation buckets. "He is a steward," Calder said. Tamsin squeezed my hand under the table. The judge rubbed her temples as if massaging words into balance. Outside, rain pretended to start. After lunch, Sheriff Tobin testified. "He told me his plan," Tobin said. "I saw his documents. He asked for a deputy to witness. I declined because optics, but I read his sign. It's his dam." Thatch called it good ol' boy favoritism. Tobin called it reading glasses for the law. Judge Saxon leaned forward. "Here's the line," she said. "No one gets to turn private into public by wishing. No one gets to erase a bridge by committee. Mr. Quaid, keep levels within statute while we finalize. HO, cease enforcement actions on structures not yours. Hotel, learn the word setback." The gavel sounded like a small door closing on a big lie. Karen's mouth made a thin line that looked expensive to maintain. Outside, cameras asked for feelings. "Water seeks level," I said. "So do people." A student reporter asked, "What about the hotel?" I looked at the clouds. "They'll adapt," I said. Weeks passed. The lake stayed shallow, a silver scarf instead of a blanket. Wildflowers found the new shore, purple and stubborn. Deer walked where boats had skated. Asa and Lark built a fort from driftwood and old dock planks. They called it Bridge Meadow. I did not correct their good idea. Lake Shade Grand became an empty stage. The spa offered clay journeys. The lobby smelled like lemon and desperation. Investors moved their money to places that still had tides. Karen stopped sending emails and started sending realtors. "Fire sale opportunities," one read. The photos had a grief you could almost peel. One evening, Tamsin brought a six-pack and sat on the dam. "I'm sorry," she said again, but softer, not for show. I let easy talk sound like truth. We watched the sunset coat the mud gold. "We could plant willows," she said. "Make a path where the bridge was." "We will," I said. A thick envelope arrived from Judge Saxon's clerk. Final order. It recognized the easement and my control of levels within environmental standards. It recognized the bridge as private property wrongfully removed. Damages for wrongful removal were modest but real. The number didn't fix cedar, but it bought trees and iron. Karen moved back to a place with bigger airports. Her house on Aurelia Loop sold to a teacher who asked to borrow our ladder. The HOA meetings shrank to people who liked lemonade and bylaws equally. Their new president sent me a card. "We went too far. We'll mow the verge." The hotel went to auction and found no buyer with a stomach. A storage company bought the furniture. Teens used the empty hallways to test skateboards at dusk. Someone painted on the wall, "Water remembers." I didn't know if I agreed, but I wanted to, so I did. I rebuilt something where the bridge had been, not a copy, but a nod. Stone steps stepping down to a shallow curve, a bench made from the last uncut cedar beam. I carved names into it. Myra's, my parents', Tamsin's, Ace's, Lark's. I left one space blank on purpose, for luck. One afternoon, a letter found me, old paper browned at the edges. It was from my father, found in a coffee can when Tamsin cleared Mom's attic. "If they come for what you made," it read, "remember you made it twice. Once with hands, once with will. Keep the second. The first can be rebuilt." I read it on the new bench, which already had a sun-warmed shape to it. The wind pushed reed music around us. Tamsin touched the letter and smiled like a person who had forgiven herself. He always wrote like he knew storms, she said. He did, I answered. He married one. He raised two. That night, I slept without arguing with the air. In my dream, the lake was a mirror again, but I could see both sides of myself in it. The man who built, the man who opened. They nodded at each other like neighbors. When I woke, the dam looked smaller, like a friend, not a weapon. Years sit different on a person after a fight like that. My cane became more honest. My hair turned winter. But the land stayed kind to a man who kept his promises. Bridge Meadow grew buttercups. The stone steps warmed early and cooled late. People came to sit without asking, which felt right. On the 4th Saturday of June, we held a picnic there. We invited everyone, even the lake shade board. Only 2 came, and they brought potato salad and shame. We ate with them anyway. Asa told the story of the sawdust morning like a hero tale. Lark passed lemonade like a queen. A reporter from the Alderfen Sentinel asked for a quote for a 10 years later piece. I said, we didn't drain a hotel. We drained a mistake. She laughed, then realized I wasn't joking. She asked, what about regret? I showed her the bench names. I see names, I said, not prices. We placed a small bronze plaque near the steps, just big enough to read without bending your back. It said, Ember Lake, Quay Dam, built by hands, kept by will. Karen's name isn't there. Neither is the hotel's. Some stories get stronger when you remove the parts that only wanted applause. At dusk, the teacher from Aurelia Loop waved from the old HOI path. She asked if her students could paint birdhouses for the reeds. Bring brushes, I said. I meant it. I'd learned that gate codes are better written on welcome signs. Doors are harder to weaponize when they swing often. Before bed, I walked alone to the dam one more time. The wheel wore rust like freckles. I touched it, and for once, I didn't ask anything of it. Rest, I said. We did enough. Downstream, frogs argued happily. Upstream, stars bent their knees to look at themselves in a shallow mirror. I thought of Karen then, only briefly. Not with hate, which is a rent you keep paying for a place you don't live in. I thought of her like weather that passed and left clearer air. The hotel still stood, an empty lesson. I nodded to it the way you nod to old injuries. Tamsin joined me, 2 mugs in hand. To what do we toast? She asked. I looked across the soft basin, at children inventing games out of whatever the day offered. To second building, I said. We clinked porcelain. The sound was small and perfect. The kind of sound that never needs microphones. So that's my story, told in simple words, because the land understands simple best. Karen destroyed my lake bridge. I opened my 20-year-old dam. The hotel dried up. We did not. We learned how to keep a name. We learned how to rebuild without permission. Water seeks level. So do we.